Thanks everyone for joining today. Let's go and get started. And thank you to joining today's conversation around how districts are solving the teacher shortage in 2026 and beyond. As we said earlier, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We do intend to do some Q&A at the end, so if you have any questions, there is a Q&A functionality that you can use to sort of share that question, and we'll do our best to answer them either at the end or during the conversation, if it's relevant to what we're talking about at that point. My name is Vinay Ganti. I lead partnerships and the district solutions team here at ETS Praxis. And so first up, I want to say welcome to the summer series that we are doing. This is one of multiple webinars we'll be doing throughout the course of the summer on a variety of different topics that we think would be of interest to you all. Today I have with me Dr. Yolanda Anderson from Alamance Burlington School System. I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself in a second, but she leads basically all HR functions at the district there. But before I go even further, Dr. Anderson, maybe if you want to introduce yourself to the audience and we can go from there.
Sure. I'm Dr. Yolanda Anderson, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources with the Alamance Burlington Schools, and that's in North Carolina. I am in my 22nd year as an educator. I have served as a classroom teacher, assistant principal, chief academic officer, chief human resources officer, assistant superintendent. So I've had the pleasure to serve in many roles at the Forest School District, and it's been quite rewarding. And I'm very excited to be here with you all today to just talk a little bit more about international teachers. So thank you so much, Vinay, for having me.
Absolutely. No, thank you for joining. And before we dive into the topic, do you mind maybe giving the people a little bit more flavor around the type of district that ABSS is? Rural, suburban,
Yeah.
urban, those sorts of things. Yeah.
Yeah, so Alamance Burlington Schools, we actually merged into one district in 1996. So we're going on 30 years. We had two districts that were housed in the Alamance County area, and now we are the Alamance Burlington School System. So we're excited to celebrate 30 years of uniting. Currently, Alamance Burlington, we serve 22,000 students across 36 school sites. And there are approximately 1,400 teachers, and in total, we have about 3,000 staff members who help support the work of our students. And like in many districts, Vinay, even across the country, we are experiencing challenges when it comes to being able to provide high quality teachers for the students here in Alamance Burlington. However, we have a superintendent, Dr. Fleming, who is committed to ensuring that we all work collaboratively and collectively to ensure that all of our students have a world-class education. And so we're excited about the work that we're doing. We are relaunching our strategic plan. And then we also recently did some rezoning to free up some space in some of our classrooms, which helps with the student to teacher ratio. And then we've also been creative with ensuring that our teachers have ongoing professional development during teacher work days, and then also there are professional development opportunities here at the district office. So really being in tune to what our staff need is important. And a way that we've done that, Vinay, is really listening to our staff. Oftentimes, it's easy for leaders to kind of tell people what to do, but that does not give you the results that you need. So it's important that we work collaboratively with our stakeholders. And we've done that, Vinay, by sending out surveys, and not just to our staff, but also to our community partners, our business partners, to really get their feedback to help us as we're working to shape the vision and the mission here in Alamance Burlington. So we're a really unique area. If you've heard of Buc-ee's, we're really excited because next year, 2027, there will be a Buc-ee's, and it's probably about 15 minutes from where we are. We're right off of I-40, and we're close to Raleigh, North Carolina, about an hour and a half from Charlotte, which is another big area, and then maybe about 30 minutes from Greensboro. So there are a lot of things to do here, and we're always looking to recruit the next best teacher to ensure that our students have what they need. So that's a little bit about Alamance Burlington.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And I think you touched on a lot of the things that you're doing on making sure that teachers feel supported and they actually have a path to being successful at Alamance Burlington. Can you maybe just touch a little bit more about how you all think about teacher recruitment today itself, and what different pathways you're seeing sort of emerge, and which ones you're excited to sort of invest in or sort of or go deeper on in the future? Not just international teachers, but just to like paint the like larger
Mhm.
landscape before we go more deeply into international teachers.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I think about that, Vinay, it's multifaceted. And I think every person represented today on this call, recruitment today does not look like it did 5 or even 10 years ago, or even um, when we were in COVID, those years. And so not only am I finding in my current role that we're competing with our neighboring districts, but we're competing across the country, because the number of vacancies across the country, it continues to grow. And so here in Alamance Burlington, we are looking to ensure that our staff members are able to come to a district where they feel supported. And one thing that I would like to highlight as we're looking at talking about the landscape, Vinay, is that oftentimes, I've heard it, that staff members will come if they're receiving the right salary, or in our district, they also receive a local supplement. But I want to tell all of you today, and I'm sure you all could agree, that salary, while it's important, it's not the end all of things. Meaning that you have to ensure that, in addition to that, that you work to provide the professional growth for our teachers
Mhm.
coming in, the mentoring support, leadership support, and ensuring that the school culture and climate at the school is one that is conducive for learning, and that it's a work environment where staff want to be. Also, when I think about the landscape for education, it's also important that we focus also on psychological safety for our staff. Also, social and emotional learning is also critical. And for me, that involves that work life balance, because as educators, we give our all. But oftentimes we put ourselves, Vinay, at the end of that, and we can find ourselves burn out.
Yep.
So when I think about Alamance Burlington, I move intentionally. And when I say I, that includes my entire team. And we work towards building, Vinay, a comprehensive workforce environment or strategy. So no longer are we just focused on, this is the summer and we're working to fill a certain number of vacancies. We are working to recruit, retain, and attract teachers all year. And we do that by one, we have two dedicated staff members who are our beginning teacher coordinators. And our beginning teacher coordinators work with over 200 new teachers in our district. They provide them with onboarding prior to the school year starting. And then they also work to ensure that our beginning teachers have mentors to help support and coach and nurture them. And then additionally, our beginning teacher coordinators also go out to recruit, but not just in North Carolina. We're actually in other states recruiting, to ensure that we have a sustainable pipeline. And then one other thing I'd like to say about the landscape is that we are finding that through our recruitment efforts, there is a decrease in the number of teachers who are entering the workforce for education. So the traditional path is not the traditional path of 5 or 10 years ago. And so here in Alamance Burlington, we rely heavily, Vinay, on teachers who we consider alternatively licensed, which means they do not currently hold an initial or a continuing license. And so we may be able to work with them where they are on a permit to teach, an emergency license, or a residency license. So it's all hands on deck, Vinay.
Yep.
And every day we are working to determine how can we find the best teachers, but not only find them, what are we going to do to keep them? So those are questions that we are constantly talking about. So that's just a little bit about the landscape that we've seen and some things that we're doing here at ABSS to ensure our students have teachers in the classroom.
I appreciate that, though. Thank you for that. And obviously today one of those strategies is sort of leveraging international teachers, more specifically teachers coming in on the cultural exchange J1 visa, so they
Yep.
can be in the United States for on the initial visa term for 3 years, but many actually renew and are able to extend up to 5 years on a per
Mm-hmm.
teacher basis. So um, would love to just maybe think through. or talk through now, like how you all think about international teachers as part of that larger strategy. ABSS, I know, is not new, or Alamance Burlington is not new to international teachers. You've used them in the past, and sort of how have you sort of thought
Hmm.
about them fitting within your larger talent strategy?
So, international teachers are a part of us. We don't see them as a separate group because, as you mentioned, they can stay with us for up to 5 years.
Right.
And I can tell you that today we have approximately 92 international teachers who help support us here at Alamance Burlington. When I look back, Vinay, at some of our data points, I saw that back in 2021, we were around 50 international teachers, but that number has grown. And the reason why it has grown is one, it's important that when our international teachers arrive and they're coming to us from all over the country, our onboarding is spot on. I have a staff member here in my division, and she works diligently to really support our international teachers by really walking them through all of the paperwork that we need to collect. She has even helped to take some of our international teachers when they're looking for housing,
Mhm.
if they have appointments to look for a car. So when I think about our international teachers, it's like a puzzle piece, and they are a part of that puzzle piece, and they are a critical part of the puzzle piece because when they're here, they're ours. And one highlight I like to tell you, Vinay, is that the staff, they don't want to leave, because, and that goes back to not only here at the district level how we start with the onboarding, but that extends out into the schools and how they welcome our international teachers and then allow our international teachers to bring their culture into the classroom. And then that helps for our students to feel comfortable and confident. And then that extends further, Vinay, out to our parents, our
Yeah.
community, and our board members. So again, I don't see them in an isolation or a silo. I
Yeah.
feel they are part of the puzzle piece that helps us here in Alamance Burlington to provide our 22,000 students with the unique information and education that they need to be successful. So that's how I view them. They're not separate, they are part of the Alamance Burlington
Yeah.
system.
That's great. And you mentioned sort of having to take a multifaceted approach before. It sounds as though you view the international teacher pathway as a like a strategic sort of thing that you look to do. Like you said, like it's part of the larger talent strategy. It's
Right.
not like an add-on. It's like an embedded piece of this larger strategy.
Correct.
We're going to do everything we can to find highly qualified teachers for our students, like irrespective of where they maybe have been last year and things of that nature. We're
Yes.
whether they're alternatives like the alternative light license, career changers, grow your own, residents that you mentioned, like you're like we're gonna approach it international teachers as one of many of those sort of multifaceted.
Correct.
Yeah, that's great. And they also
Agreed. And I like to,
yeah,
yeah, and I'd like to say the way I like to coin it is for me, and this is just one of my mantras, international teachers, they're not a replacement for traditional
oh,
recruitment, and they're not a solution. Again,
yeah,
they're just a part of our comprehensive, plan to ensure that our students have a high quality teacher in the classroom. And
right,
again, Vinay, that goes back to when I was a teacher for 9 years. My job was to ensure that my students had the best teacher every day. So even
yeah,
if I was going through something personal or had a long meeting, my kids deserve me.
right,
And so that's why we strive to ensure that our international teachers are a part of us and not feel like they're separate. So they're not a replacement or a solution. They're a part of the larger plan here in Alamance Burlington.
great, great. And so obviously you all have experience with international teacher and other partners or vendors in
Right.
the past around international teachers. What do you generally look for in an international teacher recruitment partner or provider? Like what has been sort of what have you seen has been critical for the success of these types of relationships?
Yeah. Um, So, number one for me is relationships. I'm looking for a partner that I feel that ABSS can form a true, authentic working relationship. That's critical, Vinay.
Mhm.
And I say that because we are working to ensure that our international teachers, again, feel a part of Alamance Burlington, but I can't do that if I don't have a partner where I can communicate
Yeah.
with fluently. We can have authentic conversations. We can talk about logistics. As a matter of fact, I have a call with someone from ETS after today,
Yeah.
after our time here today, and that's all because of ETS and their investment in helping Alamance Burlington have international teachers. So I would say certainly the relationship piece is important, the communication, the flexibility, and then just being able to have authentic conversations, because since we have partnered with another
Yeah.
vendor in the past, we're used to how they operate, but we're not stuck in that mindset. We want to be able to work with ETS, and you guys have done a great job in working with us. So I think those are some of the key pillars, and just knowing at the end goal, it's not about me, it's not about Alamance Burlington, but it's about the students.
Yeah.
That's always my bottom line. But those are some of the things that we really look for, and we can pick that up pretty quickly. I've worked with many vendors, and I know when there's a passion, and when there is, someone who is really wanting to help us, and ETS has been able to do that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I love how you
Yeah.
bring it back to the student at the end of the day, because I mean that's the audience that we can all align ourselves around, is like, the
Yes.
ultimately I think the one thing we can all that we should also be able to agree on is like having a high quality teacher in the classroom is the thing that should be we're all measuring towards. And one of the things that we are priding
Exactly.
ourselves very highly on in our sort of solution is this idea of bringing the highest quality, highest caliber teachers possible from other parts of the world, places like
Yeah.
India, Kenya, other places, who really can help districts like yours staff in ways maybe that historically you weren't even willing to consider
Right.
international teachers for, right? And so like maybe it's like that,
Agreed.
esoteric high school science class that you've had, now multiple years of not being able to staff or whatever it is. We really want to work
Yeah.
and partner with our district partners to figure out how to find the right candidates for those roles. So thank you for believing in us, and we
Mhm.
look forward
Yeah.
to working with you this fall and going into this fall. And we're excited about you seeing that we do want to treat this authentically, and we are here to help. So we appreciate you.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, you're welcome. And again, I see, ETS as an extension. I go back to my puzzle piece, and not simply just a company providing a service. I've seen that you guys have gone beyond that. So we want to thank you as well.
great, great. And so I guess given that we're not the first partner that you've worked with on this, what advice would you give another district, maybe somebody on this listening to it right now, or maybe when we send around this webinar to other people, they're like, what would be the nuggets of wisdom you would sort of at this point want to recommend when it comes to thinking about how to evaluate potential international teacher partners? And I would say also within that, what advice would you give to a district who may be venturing to maybe do this themselves versus partnering with someone to do it? Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Those are some great questions, Vinay. The Lots of advice, but the first thing I think, for those listening is, we shouldn't be asking, which company should we choose. I feel it's important that as a district that you are being strategic and really asking yourselves, like, what problem are you trying
Mm,
to solve first? I think that's number one. You've
yeah,
got to determine what problem you're trying to solve. And for us, it was teacher shortage, and so with that, when you have that answer, then that helps you to start really focusing on, companies who can help provide that service, but do so at a high level, and do so with intentionality and consistency. So number one, I think you have to first start with what do you want to do? Like, what are you trying to solve?
yeah,
And for me, that's critical. But then beyond that, I think some other advice that I would have is that my mom always taught me this, Renee, you got to go big or go home. So, and I say that because sometimes as educators, we're afraid to dip our toe in the pond, so to speak, and to see what's out there. And that's because of traditions. We've always done it this way. We've always had traditional teachers. Well, yeah, that is true. But now we're in 2026, and that's not reality. So I feel the next nugget is for those on the call and who may hear this beyond this is just being brave and bold and going out there to see what is available to ensure that your students have what they need. And you've heard me say that a lot, but that's important to my work. Even though I'm in HR and I'm at the district office, the 22,000 students are always on my mind when we are making those critical decisions. So number one, again, is determining what your problem is. Number two is just being brave and bold,
Yeah.
and going out there to see what is available. And then the other things I would say is to be open when you are working with different companies and asking them about what they can do for you. I think it's important to just be open to that. And then also the other advice I would give to anyone is always thinking with the end in mind, right? And for me, I go back to students being my bottom line. So just
Mhm.
always keeping that in your mind at the forefront as you are looking at maybe exploring international teachers, because it sounds scary, but we have had great success here in Alamance Burlington. And I'd like to give you a quick little story about that.
Please.
Because of the work that we have done here, from our principals, teachers who are not international, we have our international teachers who don't want to leave Vinay, to the point where we had one particular teacher, their 5 years was up. And it was devastating for that school because she had built such a community there. She
Yeah.
was a teacher leader there. She served in leadership capacities, that we
Wow.
actually had a community partner who said, "Hey, we will sponsor her visa,"
Oh my.
because they were that committed to keeping this particular international teacher in our district. Unfortunately, the company that we work with, we couldn't do that, but that
Right.
just shows you, because in Alamance Burlington, because we took that step, we were able to find international teachers who have done such phenomenal work that, one, the school didn't want them to leave, but then also we had community partners who wanted them to stay. So I think it's just really thinking beyond yourself, Vinay, as far as a life lesson, and really thinking about, what impact an international teacher can have. And then you asked me, like, if someone wants to do it on their own. I will tell you that Alamance Burlington, that's something that we are not exploring, simply because there are a lot of red tape, and it's very costly. And so that is something that we did not want to embark
Yeah.
on. So I have found it, just by working with our other partner, that it's a better fit for us to have a partner who is working through all of the visas and in the paperwork and the insurance piece. And there are just so many different laws in different countries. And so by having a partner, they're able to do some of that heavy lifting for you, so to speak. And then they provide for you the candidates that have been vetted and who are highly qualified. And then you're ready to provide those teachers for your students. So those are just some of the things that have kind of helped us. But I would like to say it's not perfect, right? Like, no one's perfect. But we try every day and try to think about, okay, what can we do differently for the upcoming year for new teachers coming in? But just always thinking forthcoming, so that our international teachers feel the support. So those are just some things, some advice that I would give, but I would just say go for it
Yeah.
if you have a need. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, it's funny. It's sometimes it's actually easier to be successful by being brave than it is to being timid.
Yeah.
For example, like a good example of that is international teachers, where I imagine that it's probably natural for a district to be like, you know what, maybe we'll bring in one or two, but like it's actually really
Mm-hmm.
hard to build in new processes, new support
Right.
systems, and a new sort of cultural norms and all that stuff if you only have one or two. Whereas if you bring in 10
Right.
or 15, right
Mm-hmm.
now you have this like sort of critical mass. You can actually build the sort of culture around, build that sort of support structure you're talking about. Really sort of,
Yes,
and
and you're
also
building and
you're
you're
building
building
community.
community too,
Exactly.
Vinay. Yeah, you're
Exactly.
building community.
Whereas if you only
Yeah,
have one or two, it kind of gets lost, right? Maybe only because only one of your
it
schools gets to
does.
benefit from it or whatever it is, right? So
Exactly.
I love that sort of idea of like, sometimes being bold actually leads to
Yeah,
better outcomes too. It actually helps
it
reduce
does.
the risk in some ways. Yeah,
Right. It
yeah,
does. It pays off. It pays
right,
off. Yeah,
right.
for sure. For sure. Yeah.
And I love this sort of the example you gave of the one where your community partner actually tried to keep this person in the U.S.
They did.
Um, what do you have any other sort of examples of or stories of international teachers and the positive impact they made across your
Hmm.
district? Would love to just
Yeah.
hear there, and then after that we could turn it over maybe to the audience to see if there are any questions.
Sure. So I'd like to highlight, I mentioned that we have about 92
Yeah,
international teachers and they are spread out through our campuses. We have them serving in like dual language positions, but because of the need, Vinay, they're also helping to teach science, math, social studies, all of those core critical areas. And so the one other story that I can share is that you would be amazed at the principals when because they know that they're at the fifth year,
yeah,
and they call me or they call the executive director of my department and they're saying, is there anything we can do? They'll even go to board members and say, is there anything we can do to keep them? And that's because, Vinay, the international teachers, again, we don't even call them international teachers. I'm just saying that for purposes of this call, but our teachers, they've done such phenomenal work. They're leading PLC meetings, they're leading grade level teams, they're supporting other teachers in the building. They're also, like, if there's a new international teacher coming in, if there's an international teacher who's been here 2 or 3 or 4 years,
yeah,
they're able to help build that community with the new international teacher who's coming in. So for me, success is not just measured by, did an international teacher get an award? For me, a success story is when we have international teachers who are just devastated, and we have principals who are devastated when they have to leave because they've done
right,
such great work. So for me, that's success. And we see that every year, Vinay, when it's time for several of them to return home. And so to me, that's success, but that only happens when you're intentional, when you're consistent, and when you put in the time and effort to show all of our teachers, and specifically for this call, our international teachers, that we care about you, that
yeah,
you are a part of our why, which is important for me, in ABSS, because without having your why, then what are we doing, Vinay? So for me, success looks like, having our international teachers serve as teacher leaders in our schools and doing so with fidelity. And then when it's time for them to leave, us being, we're brokenhearted because they have worked, to help continue to build a positive culture for the school. So to me, that's what success looks like. And so those are just some of the success stories that I hear every year. And it pains me, but we are bound by, the 5 years and we can't go beyond that. But I do like to tell our staff that if they return home for 2 years, then sometimes they
uh,
are able to return. So for me, that's what my success stories look like, is just hearing all the positive things that our international teachers are doing in our 36 schools, um, every day.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and 5 years may sound not like a lot, but when you actually compare that to the average
Oh
retention
yeah.
rates from other teachers right now, it's like teaching is not an easy profession. So to be able to get
Correct.
5 years from a
Correct.
high quality teacher is still a
Hmm.
lot. It still can really help a lot of districts, right?
Oh yes, and they want to be here. They
Right.
want to be here. The passion is there, and you feel it when I'm in schools visiting. If I'm in a classroom, you feel the passion from our international teachers, and that's what we want for all of our students. Of course, we strive, to find teachers who are right here in America. But again, everyone on this call can contest to the challenges that
Yes.
that poses. And so, if there are opportunities, Vinay, where we can have teachers who are highly qualified to come here and teach our students, and then also, infuse in them their culture as well, I mean, it's a win. And again, it's all about our students and their success, Vinay.
Yeah. Agreed. So we do have one question so far. How did you gain buy-in
Sure.
from your internal stakeholders to pursue international teacher recruitment?
Well, we gained buy-in, when our stakeholders saw the need, and they realized that despite the efforts of human resources, that we were just not able to, ensure that we could close the gap when it came to our vacancies. And so to get the buy-in, honestly, it goes back to showing the data. So when you're showing the data, when in terms of the number of vacancies that you have, despite the efforts from human resources, then it's important that you share that data with the Board of Education, the superintendent, and then that information is public, Vinay. And then as a parent or a community member or a board member, how could you say no to wanting to explore other options to help fill those vacancies? So for me here in Elements Burlington, buy-in is critical, but it starts with being upfront and showing the data. I mean, and you can't argue with the data.
Yeah, great. Love that. So next question is, for those of you recruiting international teachers, has transcript evaluation been a major obstacle? This person's in New Jersey and they've had challenges with 3-year degrees and obtaining the equivalency requirements of a 3-year degree from a home country in New Jersey. Are you experiencing something similar in North Carolina? How have you overcome those sort of challenges?
So, with our current partner that we're working with, this partner actually works through the transcripts for us to
Yeah.
determine the number of years of experience for the educator. They actually also help us in terms of the salary. In North Carolina, we have a state salary schedule, and our current vendor is able to look at the transcript, determine the years of experience, and then help us to determine the actual salary. So, that's how we have been able to
Good.
function because that would certainly be a challenge looking at a transcript that is not familiar to us here. So those are some ways that we have been able to navigate through that. But certainly, I understand your question. That would be a challenge for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's similarly how we operate. We work with the intermediary services or evaluation services, depending on which ones are approved in a given state. And generally speaking, depending on which state we're working in, we try to get ahead of that. We try to front load that actually, even prior
Hmm.
if we feel a high degree of confidence that we're about to sign a partnership with a district in a given state, we may actually go ahead and ask candidates who we know would have interest in working in that state to go ahead and get their transcript starting to the equivalency process going. Because what we've found is that
Right.
actually is the longest part of the process in order to obtain the visa. So it
Correct.
so for those of you in New Jersey or other places where you know that might be a challenge, if we do ever have a conversation with you, what we'd probably do is really try to map that out at the front end of even during the pre-signature or sales process to see if we could get ahead of it
Yeah.
with you all.
Hmm.
Um, so one other question, I think we have time for like one or two more. So you mentioned that intentional onboarding is a critical part of the experience. What's one thing your team does during the onboarding process that you'd recommend every district adopt? I like that.
Well, I will tell you the one thing in my whole team, it's about 13 of us. They understand that my bottom line is a simple old adage: treat everyone the way you want to be treated. And so that's just something simple. And so my team understands that during onboarding, one, we need to be prepared, meaning that all paperwork for our candidates coming in should be readily available if they haven't already completed it online. But I also need my staff to present a positive demeanor when we are working with our candidates. And then as they're walking them through the PowerPoint, ensuring that they are engaging and that they're being authentic. So for me, it just goes back to treating people the way you want to be treated. And because of that, we've received such positive feedback from candidates on how they were treated when they first, walked into the doors here at the central office. And so it's nothing special. It's no magic potion or anything I can share, but what I can tell you is that as a part of my work as the assistant superintendent, I work through a lot of high level things, including investigations. And one thing that I really strive to do is that, irregardless of the situation, I treat that person the way that I want to be treated, because regardless of what we're talking about, they're important to me. So to me, I would just say to make sure to tell your team to be prepared and present positively and be engaging, because those candidates, they're here to help us and they should walk away feeling supported. So those are just some things, nothing special.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up because I think, if anything, what you've hit on for me is while the tactics and strategies may have changed around how you find candidates,
Hmm.
sort of bring them into the buildings, the things
Right.
that keep them there, the things that keep people inspired and motivated don't change, which is like, how do you keep people feeling supported?
Exactly.
How do you treat it like a profession? How do you treat it like a profession worth investing in? And how do you treat the people like they're worth investing in on an ongoing and daily basis? It starts with the relationships and the people, their principals, everyone sort of who interact with them on a day-to-day basis. And I love
Yeah.
sort of always coming back to keeping the students or the why, the end in mind at the forefront of everything.
Mhm.
So I'll wrap up.
Yes.
I'll wrap up here and say, Dr. Anderson, thank you so much for your time today and your insight here.